Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Great. Thank you. I know we're a very small group, and I wasn't quite sure how many people would arrive. And if it's like me, I've been so busy lately that I've been watching recordings and not necessarily joining a lot of MYFest. So we'll watch the participant numbers, but if the participants don't increase a lot, we can certainly just talk within the group as opposed to breakout rooms when there's so few of us. But let's see if the numbers climb. So I want to keep it informal. I want to have a discussion, share some of my experiences from Cape Town, and give you some ideas about students and student co-creation, some of our experiences and what we've looked at and developed and what we're thinking about, all to do with student inclusion. So just a little bit about me. Okay, so this is okay, let's do the workshop outline first. So we're going to talk about open education practices, some reflection time, and you'll see I have a framework and a Google Doc that I will be sharing with you. Still do that. And then we will look at case studies, have a bit of a breakout or a discussion, and then talk about attribution and recognition for students and some closing comments. So just a little bit about me. So I'm at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. I've been at the university for most of my life. Moved from actually being an archaeologist into education and higher education, so quite a dramatic change in discipline. But I've been very fortunate to be involved in open education initiatives from around 2007 initially, but mostly from 2010. So I have a bit of experience in open education, and I've been privileged to be part of open education global conferences and other really interesting Global South networks where we've looked at open education, the power of open education, the impact of open education, and done some really interesting research in that area. And then more recently, I have a UNESCO chair in open education and social justice. So I've had that since 2022. So that's been keeping me busy as well in quite a different kind of area, and quite interesting getting into the UNESCO world and meeting other chairs and trying to build networks and really thinking about future of higher education, future of including students more into design and curriculum, and also just exploring open education and social justice. So it's really has, I feel like it's opened some wonderful doors in terms of open education. And then I'm also a very proud member of that global OER graduate network. You'll see there just below my name, GoGN. And that's a wonderful network if you have any PhD students that are doing any work in open education. They can join that network, and it's an incredible support. Okay, so this is the university. This is Upper Campus for a reason, because it's up on the mountain. But we also have health sciences campuses and arts campuses, which are more kind of in the city. And yeah, residential university, we have good blended courses. We have some online courses, but not as many. It really is a campus where students come to study, and medium size, 29,000 students, and about 1,100 roughly academic staff. So that's us on the side of the mountain, and you're all welcome to come visit. And so I've been involved in a lot of different projects, but the project that is most recently involved in, and that still continue to be involved in, is this project called Digital Open Textbooks for Development, and we like to call it DOT4D. And it was initially funded by the IDRC, the Canadian IDRC, and that funding ended in 2021. And with a lot of persuasion, we managed to persuade our university to, in fact, support the initiative. So You'll see my wonderful colleagues there, in the middle, Michelle, and then Bianca, who are now permanent staff at UCT. So we carry on the open work, carrying the open torch, and work with academics who are creating open materials and open textbooks at UCT. So that's currently my role, part of my role. I also do a lot of teaching, postgraduate teaching, and supervising, and all kinds of other exciting committee work as one does. So I wanted to talk a little bit about open education, and I'm not too sure in the room whether you are aware of open education, but I just wanted to kind of discuss a couple of sort of key terms that I thought were important. So one is this idea of open education, and perhaps you might have heard of open access or open education resources or open textbooks. But this term, open education, is kind of a broader term that encompasses not only the resources, but also tools and practices. So it really is an umbrella term for openness in a more broad sense, and also in a sense of bringing the opens together so that there aren't these kind of silos of open access on one side, open education on the other, and we can learn so much from each other. So open education is this kind of broad term, and the licensing is very important. The Creative Commons license, which you will have already seen on my slides in the beginning, these materials that are produced during this process are licensed with an open license, like a Creative Commons license, so that users can use the materials, they know how to use the materials and who to attribute. Then what we found in our work is this idea of an open textbook is a very interesting one. And we've had a lot of questions around what exactly do you mean, and how do we define an open textbook? Because it's online, you know, it's not that book that we're used to printing out and having this, this static book. So open textbook has really exciting affordances though. So it is mostly digital, although certainly there are affordances to print if you want to. And what we've said broadly is it's materials related to a course. So it's kind of scaffolded content that will help the student around a particular course. So that's what we said there, open license. But what we've seen, this kind of open textbook as such, is that it really affords engagement with students and students working in authorship, quality assurance, and publishing. So we've seen those examples at UCT, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We also have, the open textbook also has affordances for integrating multimedia and third-party content, thereby enabling a wide range of epistemic representation. So we really can bring in interesting local examples and multilingualism into open education. And then I mentioned the word practices, also a term that is a bit broader than just open education resources. It's actually the practice around the resource. It's the creation of resources and the use of resources and the sharing of teaching practices and pedagogies. So that was a little bit about open education. If you're new to open education or wanted a little bit of clarity on some of the issues. And all of this work that I've done, that I've been working on, is all underpinned by a social justice framework. So what we wanted to do, looking at the open textbook, was we wanted to see if the open textbook would be able to address injustices that we were seeing in the classroom, in higher education, and quite specifically at UCT, but certainly a number of the injustices are across institutions, and not only in South Africa, but across institutions around the world. And we wanted to see how does it help? How can we show that it obviously helps students and it's free? How can we bring students' stories into open education? How can we bring their voices into open education when these stories and voices and lived experiences have been excluded before, could open education and open textbooks, as an example, be a way of addressing all of these injustices from the past? And that's been a lot of the research we've done, and I won't go into that in detail now, but if you are interested in this relationship between open and social justice, we have done quite a bit of research, myself and my team, on this work. So yes, so that's a little bit of the background around social justice. So what I want to do, I will stop sharing in a few minutes because I want to share this link. What I wanted to do in the course of the workshop, so I've done a little introduction, and I'm going to share the link now in the chat. I should have done that earlier, but I'll do it now, for this Google Doc. And it's something you can take away with you. You can make a copy of it now and work in it as we go through discussing different things. If you are looking at the framework, you're welcome to comment on it. If there's something that you think I'm missing or something that you would like to add, you're welcome to do that. And this is just a resource that you can take away with you. It also has a link to the slides in it as well, so that will hopefully be useful as well. So just something to kind of have in the background, and we'll start working on it in a few minutes. Just one or two other things I want to talk about. So what we'll do, I'll tell you a little bit more about the little task that I want you to do in a couple of slides. So what I want you to think about now is you've come to the session that's on co-creation, and either you've already done quite a lot of this work with students, or you're thinking about, how can I get my students more involved? How can I bring them into the classroom, and how can I go on this co-creation journey? And so there are a number of kind of broader contextual things that one needs to do. So, and this is the kind of approach that we've been looking at when we've been looking at co-creation. So one thing you could do is you could involve your whole class in co-creation. So all the students are involved in producing pages in a textbook, or they're all involved in collecting images that depict aspects of the textbook or local examples. And a whole class approach is obviously very equitable. It's including everyone. But that's not always in the context what you necessarily want to do. You may not want such a big pedagogical shift. We have seen it done successfully, but it really is a strategic decision that you make. Perhaps you want part of the class. You want to just select a few students. You want a few students to help you, to inform you, to help you grow, to help you design your course and work in your course. So you select a few students. Or you say to your class, would anyone like to do this? So it's not a selection, it's for volunteers to come forward. So there are different kinds of approaches that you can use. And you can decide as well in the process, is it before the course or textbook or materials or whatever it is that you're doing? You know, do you want to bring students in before you even start designing, you know, doing a survey to find out, or interviews or focus groups or something to find out what they need? So before the course, do you want to use students in the course or in the production of something? Or do you want to include students after the course, to review the course, to do a kind of quality assurance check on the course? So there are lots of different approaches that, and there's no right or wrong. It's completely dependent on your context and you know, if you're new to this, what would be a good place to start for you in terms of thinking about co-creation and openness? And then one last slide before we go on to a little bit of time, and I'm going to share that link, stop sharing and share the link. So we found lots of different roles for students, which is quite exciting. There are so many different ways that we can include students. And, you know, our experience has been so positive around what they've got out of doing this. So, you know, can be author, co-editor, and then there's this kind of long list here of of different options, and there are probably more, and you may think of more. So please, if you do think of more, add those to the list you'll see in the Google Doc. But students may be proposers. They may propose material. They may be testers. They may test the content to make it more understandable and accessible. They may review, and this is an interesting point that we found, review to eliminate expert blind spots. So the students have experience where, and things that they need and understand, they've been through the course and now they're reviewing and they realize there needs to be a section on this particular thing was not explained enough before. Students can design quizzes, design concepts and approaches. They can be used for typesetting, proofreading. They can assist as well. So there's a whole range of different things that students can be doing. And so that's what I'd like you to kind of start thinking about. What is your approach? You know, why are you doing this? A little bit of thought about that. How would you do this? What would your strategy be around how you would include students, and what kinds of roles would you be thinking about? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to figure that out in a minute. Sorry, I'm not used to new share, stop share, stop share. There we go. Great. Okay, I'm going to now go ahead and share the link. Are there any questions at this stage?
None in the chat yet.
None in the chat yet? Okay.
Unless on the floor.
Anyone want to share any of their experiences? Elias. Elias works with me. Right. It's here. There's there in the chat now is the link. And I need you to all check that you can get into that. It should be shareable. You should be able to edit. Everybody able to get in there? Just to share again. So this is what it looks like. I see. Great. Good. People are here. Okay.
Glenda, do you still need breakout rooms in this activity?
No, I think we're going to try, because we've got so few people.
Okay.
Maybe. I think maybe breakout rooms are nice. Maybe we can just do not for this little section though, Yassir, for the next section. This section now is a quiet reflection of your own, to have a look at this and think a little bit about what you would be wanting to do in your teaching. So you can take this document, do whatever you want with it. And there's a little bit of information in the beginning, and then you'll see the purpose, why are you doing this, how you would involve the class, how you would think about engagement, and what the student roles are. So just for a few minutes, just to kind of have a look at this, and I'm going to kind of keep quiet for 5 minutes. And if you can just, take it, you can add into this document if you want to as well, because there's not a lot of us. And then you can see once you start thinking about it, if there's something else that you want to add. And then we'll do breakout rooms a little bit later into small groups. Okay, so I'm going to give you just 5 minutes now. And then I'm going to sort of call you back into the room, so to speak. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay, and a couple more slides. And then we can do breakout rooms. Great. Okay. So, okay, so I wanted to share a couple of examples relatively quickly. I know I'm trying to get through quite a lot in 1 hour, but I kind of feel that it could be that the AI was quite interesting as well. So I'm going to get there to an interesting example of students and AI. But just a very interesting, if you want to get into this work on student co-creation, the work of Catherine Bovell is highly recommended at the University of Edinburgh. And what we did was we had a look at all the different open textbooks that were produced through our project. And she has a very nice framework that helps you to think about how students can work with you. So really useful resource if you want to explore this further. And so that's kind of what we did. We did this, what we called collaborative open textbook production models. And we looked at her different ways of engaging with students, from a kind of a light touch, what she called participatory, to a bit more engagement, to co-creation, and then the bright pink is partnership, where students really have like an agency in the work. So we had a look at that kind of continuum of just sort of a little bit more co-creation and then into partnership. And we also looked at that in terms of kind of remedies for injustice. So work around that if anyone's interested. So these are our people, some of them anyway. So just so you have an idea. And so one of them approached us, and this is where the AI comes in, a little last year sometime, and said to us that he wants to use AI in his teaching. And he has a wonderful way of including students. So this quote really sort of sums him up. Students have been seen to be more engaged in the content. And in his teaching, we have tried to bring students in to flatten the hierarchy and create from within. So a very interesting open philosophy that he has. And he approached us in this email and said, this was right, you still felt like, September last year, we were still, things were still pretty new. They feel like they're new all the time, but they were new then. And we were very excited about this. And he said he wants to use students to use ChatGPT to create initial chapters and students to review and also add images. And these were open textbook chapters. So he was an open textbook author. Now he wanted to create more open education. He also had a little thing about he wanted to do some MCQs as well. And he was worried about licensing. So he brought us in because he was kind of, oh, what license do I use? I'm worried I'm going to get into trouble. And so we took this we said to him, do you mind if we sit in on everything and learn what we can from you and be part of the process? So we did, and we took on one of the students specifically, and she became our co-author on this work that we did. What we were very impressed with was the ability of students to work with ChatGPT. These were second-year health sciences students. When they had their first session, they had, without any kind of training, I thought quite amazing critical AI digital literacy skills. They were very interested in the prompts, and they did receive a prompt from the author. They were checking their facts, they were checking the references, they were very concerned about the ethical and legal issues. We were really quite impressed at their kind of critical take on what was happening. And they had different approaches. So one student got a whole lot of information and put it into ChatGPT to create a draft, whereas the others had an initial prompt that they used, and then they refined and refined and refined to get the right chapter at the end. And then all of it was reviewed by experts. So it was a whole learning process of being kind of immersed in a topic the students didn't really know that much about, and then also having the expert reviews at the end. So very, very interesting. Students really enjoyed it. Again, the lecturer here, his impression was he was so impressed about the students' checks and balances without me or without us actually telling them what to do. So very impressed by that. But then as a lecturer, he also felt that he was winging it. He wasn't quite sure what he was doing. He had an idea about prompting, but a lot of it was kind of intuitive. And he felt that ChatGPT was a double-edged sword for creating these chapters. So he said it was quicker, but he felt it wasn't necessarily better. He had an idea that, you know, he produced these open textbook chapters before. This was new content, but he thought somehow it would be better, but he said it wasn't actually better. But it was much quicker, and that helped. And then with the expert review, the chapters came up to what he actually wanted from them in the end. The other thing that he worried about was assessment, and I think that is a worry for all of us at the moment with AI. And it was so interesting because now he was telling the students to use AI. This is what you're producing. So what he did with his rubric was, instead of looking at the content of the chapter, which he would have done in the past, he now looked at how the students were engaged in the process and how they engaged with ChatGPT. So he got them to send their whole list of prompts so he could actually have a look at what was going on there. And the students who were really engaged got a higher score, higher mark. A very interesting approach. So just another example of co-creation with then students working with ChatGPT to do that. So in all of this work, and especially in the era of AI, or this world that will be AI, and how things are changing so quickly, I feel that this is something that we really mustn't lose, is helping students to have a sense of belonging. And one of the research aspects that we did when we were interviewing students is we spoke to them about their experience of co-creation, how it made them feel working with academics. You know, were they comfortable? What did they gain out of it? And out of it came this kind of sense of value and importance, and the sense of belonging, of really feeling part of the department, part of the university. And we know this is something students really struggle with when they come to our university from all different, from rural areas, from all different kind of walks of life to UCT and to this strange culture, and they do struggle with belonging. So I think this is something that was kind of underlie all our principles in terms of thinking about AI, and that the fact that AI might really be able to help our students to, you know, student assistance and individualized learning and all these things, but that isn't going to help them to feel that sense of belonging. And we have to worry, we can even worry that might go in the other direction. Students feel even more isolated. So these are things we need to be very careful of going ahead. So these were the kinds of things that I was putting everything together around social justice and open education, co-creation, and a sense of belonging. Dwell on that slide. So then I wanted to talk about, and that's what I want us to talk about in the breakout rooms. And I think we might be able to do a couple of groups of 3. So Irene and Yasir, you can also be in groups, and I can be in a group. So we know that we can't talk about injustice and belonging and so on without thinking about the traditional power dynamics that exist in the university and in our classrooms. They've been there for years, and we need to think about what ways we're going to approach this so that we can think about flattening that hierarchy and making students feel like they do have a voice. And it is not a small challenge. We realize this. So that's something that I want to talk about a little bit more now in our breakout rooms, because this is sometimes quite a barrier to thinking about working with students, and to actually think about what these concerns are. Our examples, we had some who did a little bit of what we call tilting of power, just a little bit, lots of structure. Another person who was more sort of free form, but only used a few students. And then one person who really shifted the power and really just had invited students in and got their buy-in and worked with them to create chapters. So different kinds of approaches. Okay, so this was the activity, and you know, you can take this as your guidelines, but just to talk in general about the kinds of challenges, you know, that you have. I mean, what do you feel about this idea of co-creation with students? Do you think it does help this sort of sense of belonging that I've suggested it might help? You know, how do you feel about sharing the classroom space and sharing your resources and so on, and design of resources with your students? Okay, so that's that kind of task in general. And we have 5 participants only, okay? Is it worth doing a breakout room? What do you think, Irene, Yathu?
Then it will be 2 in a room and 3 in another. Otherwise,
Yeah.
If you're joining a room,
Yeah,
it
I
will
can join
be,
the room.
then you will, because you're the host at the moment, I'm not able to.
Oh,
So
Can you
go
give
to
me
room
hosting?
1.
I lost hosting privileges, Glenda. So
Yeah,
if you
and
can
they
give it me
came to
back.
you, Glenda, so you could.
okay.
Let me stop the recording. You need to unmute so that you can speak to us, Glenda.
That was a little bit quick, that move. Good. I hope that was useful, Heather. I hope you were able to share some ideas and catch up a little. Any questions, David?
No, but I'm going to check with, we use Brightspace at 2 of the universities I teach for, Southeastern and Buffalo State. We use Brightspace. We're still
Okay.
using Blackboard at UVI, but I'm going to reach out to the people at Brightspace and the people in our university library. Since, you know, I got that idea really from you. I want to reach out to see, there may be some module that can be added. I don't see, right now, I don't see a tool in Brightspace
No.
that would lend itself to an open collaboration like this, especially one that in the end you want anybody to have access to.
Exactly.
Brightspace is a closed system.
It's a
And
closed
so,
system.
yeah, but I'm going to reach out to our library and talk to them about what your library is doing and seeing maybe they can put their librarian heads together. And I would love some help on that end, on the publishing end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My experience of librarians, especially in the US, is that they're very knowledgeable around open education resources, and you might find that they will be able to help you with that, point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and they're very, very willing to help. I bring them in as guest speakers to share research practices and, you know, citation and referencing and so forth. So I know exactly who I'm going to reach out to. Thank you for suggesting that as, you know, another way to get help.
Okay, that's great. Okay, I've got 1 or 2. I've got a few more slides, but very quick. One of the aspects when we were interviewing the students was we asked them about recognition. and asked them, what is important. And one of the things we asked was, do they want to be paid for the work? And our students generally do want to be paid for the work. It does help them, especially in our kind of environment where students are mostly not really making it every month. But what the open education did, and maybe this, I can only talk to your example now, David, but there's something for students that's very valuable and pleasing is the aspect of being published. So the idea of having your name on a chapter, having your name on the list of authors, it was wonderful. They felt that was one of the most exciting aspects about it. It's something they could use on their CVs in the future. They got their family members were proud of them. Their peers acknowledged them. So it's actually the power of the open education is that publishing is actually giving them something that they really feel that they were part of. So it's co-creation. So there's a lot of research around co-creation, students co-creation, but there isn't quite the same recognition and attribution that you would get if you're creating something open and you acknowledge that the students are part of that. And that's a very powerful aspect.
I love the fact that the end product is way beyond just academic class exercise or activity. I like all kinds of assessments where the end product it raises the level of importance of it, and it's also more authentic.
Yes, absolutely.
It's more authentic than just doing this activity for class, and so the motivation I find is not an issue at all. It's a benefit.
Great. What else have I got here? Okay, I just basically attribution. We've seen these kinds of forms of attribution. We do know about Creative Commons license and attribution. And that's kind of all from me. This was some of the things that we were just talking about to wrap up in terms of concerns. What kind of help do you need from your institution? What are the obstacles or opportunities that you might think of? I kind of want to stop sharing. Yeah, and there's some references there as well. Heather, I haven't heard from you. Anything that you've learned from the session and found interesting? Are you doing this work already?
Yeah, I've been doing co-creation for about 5 years, or I was teaching. I'm unfortunately out of a teaching position right now. And one of the things that really spoke to me was when I was doing it, and still does, is the allocation of power. So being able to give your students agency does require you yourself to have agency. And so, I was a part-time instructor for a really long time. I had students, I taught at 2 different institutions, and one gave me a syllabus and said, this is the syllabus you have to teach. Another allowed me to build my syllabus. So obviously it was a lot easier for me to do co-creation at the institution that gave me the agency to create the course the way I envisioned it, versus the one that gave me a prescriptive course to teach. So it's a really interesting dynamic to talk about giving students agency, but also a reminder that not every faculty member has the same agency across the board, even just based on who they are or what position they have. But that being said, being able to pass agency on to students, to me, is it certainly added to their sense of belonging. I did it in a science course for non-majors, and I had students writing science content, and a lot of them thought, I don't have the ability to do this at the beginning of the semester. But by the end of the semester, they realized that they do have a voice in science. Their sense of belonging wasn't necessarily like at the institution or in the course, but like in this place of society that, you know, they didn't feel like they had, you know, they weren't scientists, so therefore science isn't something they belong to, but because they're a part of society and science is part of society, they realize that they do actually have a voice. And so it increased their sense of belonging in that way. It's a little bit different perspective of thinking of belonging. But to me, it was always really powerful to see that transformation happen for them. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, it does depend on your institution and your context, just how much freedom you have to do these kinds of things. And it definitely is a shift of mindset. So some institutions will be further along than others. And certainly, you know, my experience from my university is we're not very far along in this process. You know, this is something that we're seeing the benefits of. We're starting a number of new projects, and we had a call recently for people who are interested in this work. We actually held a short course around co-creation. And we were so surprised and amazed by the people that came up with the incredible ideas of the work that they wanted to do. They just needed a little bit of a nudge to go, you know, we can help you a little bit with this, and we can send you on your way. And it's quite amazing that people are truly seeing this as a path forward. That it cannot be that we have our students and we're designing universities of the future for our students, but we won't be around in 2050 probably. So we really need their views and their agency and their voices around what we should be doing and how we should be learning and ways of learning. I think it's time to change. But as we know, institutions change very slowly. But we can't anymore. I mean, AI has shown us how quickly things can change. We've got to move forward with it, and see what we can do. So that's why I like sharing that example of the students using AI to create open textbook chapters as a quite a kind of interesting little exercise and good place to kind of start with using AI and how to assess it. So we know that's going to be part of everything we're going to be doing in future. Any other comments? I'm also on the editorial board for a journal called the International Journal of Students as Partners, which is a kind of combination. Initially was sort of started out of the US and also with collaborators in England. And then they're definitely broadening out now and trying to get more editorial board members from other places in the world. But that's also a wonderful resource if you do want to read up a little bit more about co-creation. Some of the real leaders in the field publish in that particular journal. So very, very useful journal to go and have a look at. And if you want to publish with your students, get your students to tell their stories about their experience of working with you, and they get a chance to get published. So that's also quite exciting. Always looking for those opportunities for students. Anything else? Any other questions? I see we are at time.